I thought it would be good to get back into the swing of things slowly. So I have a book with me, and I have some spare time, so what better to do than to make a quick ASMR video. I'm going to read the first, let's say, part of this book, and if you like it, then I'll read all the other parts, and if not, then we can just move on to something else. I'm going to make my way through requests soon, so yeah. The book is from the First Law trilogy, which I received along with a Game of Thrones bag, a dragon bookmark, and a Muhammad Ali card. Thank you, Christian. I didn't really know him at the time, but it was a really nice gift, and we're friends now, so it was great. He works in the same place as I do, so I pop round and see him when I can. What else was I going to tell you? Oh yeah, I've got some cosplays, and I'm working on an Arya Stark cosplay and a 2P America cosplay, so that's really fun. And what else? I think that's it. The First Law trilogy is by Abercrombie, and I'm reading a bit of the first book called The Blade Itself, and I've read quite far in, actually, page 275, and I'm really liking it so far, so great. So let's start. The end. Logan plunged through the trees, bare feet slipping and sliding on the wet earth, the slush, the wet pine needles, breath rasping in his chest, blood thumping in his head. He stumbled and sprawled onto his side, nearly cut his chest open with his own axe. Lay there panting, peering through the shadowy forest. The dogman had been with him until a moment ago, he was sure, but there wasn't any sign of him now. As for the others, there was no telling. Some leader, getting split up from his boys like that. He should have been trying to get back, but the Shanka were all around. He could feel them moving between the trees, his nose full of the smell of them. It sounded as if there was some shouting going on somewhere on his left. Fighting, maybe. Logan crept slowly to his feet, trying to stay quiet. A twig snapped, and he whipped around. There was a spear coming at him, a cruel-looking spear coming at him fast, with a Shanka on the other end of it. "Shit," said Logan. He threw himself to one side, slipped and fell on his face. Rolled away, thrashing through the brush, expecting the spear through his back at any moment. He scrambled up, breathing hard. He saw the bright point poking at him again, dodged out of the way, slithered behind a big tree trunk. He peered out, and the flat head hissed and stabbed at him. He showed himself on the other side, just for a moment, then ducked away, jumped around the tree, and swung the axe down, roaring loud as he could. There was a crack as the blade buried itself deep into the Shanka's skull. Lucky that. Then Logan reckoned he was due a little luck. The flathead stood there, blinking at him. Then it started to sway from side to side, blood dribbling down its face. Then it dropped like a stone, dragging the axe from Logan's fingers, thrashing around on the ground at his feet. He tried to grab hold of his axe handle, but the Shanka still somehow had a grip on its spear, and the point was flailing around in the air. "Gah!" squawked Logan as the spear cut a nick in his arm. He felt a shadow fall across his face, another flathead, a damn big one, already in the air, arms outstretched. No time to get the axe, no time to get out of the way. Logan's mouth opened, but there was nothing, no time to say anything. What do you say at a time like that? They crashed to the wet ground together, rolled together through the dirt and thorns and the broken branches, tearing and punching and growling at each other. A tree root hit Logan in the head, hard, and made his ears ring. He had a knife somewhere, but he couldn't remember where. They rolled on and on, downhill, the world flipping and flipping around. Logan trying to shake the fuzz out of his head and throttle the big flathead at the same time. There was no stopping. It seemed a clever notion to pitch camp near the gorge. No chance of anyone sneaking up behind. Now, as Logan slid over the edge of the cliff on his belly, the idea lost much of its appeal. His hands scrabbled at the wet earth, only dirt and brown and pine needles. His fingers clutched at nothing. He was beginning to fall. He let go a little whimper. His hands closed around something, a tree root sticking out from the earth at the very edge of the gorge. He swung in space, gasping, but his grip was firm. "Ha!" he shouted. He was still alive. It would take more than a few flatheads to put an end to Logan Nine Fingers. He started to pull himself up to the bank, but couldn't manage it. There was some great weight about his legs. He peered down. The gorge was deep, very deep, with sheer, rocky sides. Here and there, a tree clung to a crack, growing out into empty air and spreading its leaves into space. The river hissed away far below, fast and angry, foaming white water fringed by jagged black stone. That was all bad for sure, but the real problem was closer to hand. The big shanker was still with him, swinging gently back and forth with its dirty little hands clamped tight around his left ankle. "Shit," muttered Logan. It was quite a scrape he was in. He'd been in some bad ones, all right, and lived to sing the songs, but now it was hard to see how this could get much worse. That got him thinking about his life. It seemed bitter, pointless sort of life now. No one was any better off because of it, full of violence and pain, with not much but disappointment and hardship in between. His hands were starting to tire now. His forearms were burning. The big flathead didn't look like it was going to fall off any time soon. In fact, it had dragged himself up his leg away. It paused, glaring up at him. If Logan had been the one clinging to the shanker's foot, he would have most likely thought, "My life depends on this leg I'm hanging from. Best not take any chances." A man would rather save himself than kill his enemy. Trouble was that the shanker didn't think this way, and Logan knew it, so it wasn't much of a surprise when it opened its big mouth and sank its teeth into his calf. "Ah!" Logan grunted, and squealed and kicked out as hard as he could with his bare heel, kicked a bloody gash in the shanker's head. But it wouldn't stop biting, and the harder he kicked, the more his hands slipped on the greasy root above. There wasn't much root left to hold on to now, and what there was looked like was snapping off at any moment. Tried to think past the pain in his hands, the pain in his arms, the flathead's teeth sinking into his leg. He was going to fall. The only choice was between falling on rocks or falling on water, and that was a choice that more or less made itself. Once you've got a task to do, it's better to do it than to live with the fear of it. That's what Logan's father would have said. So he planted his free foot firmly on the rock face, took one last deep breath, and flung himself out into empty space, with all the strength he had left. He felt the biting teeth let go of him, and the grasping hands, and for a moment he was free. Then he began to fall, fast. The sides of the gorge flashed past him, grey rock, green moss, patches of white snow, all tumbling around him. Logan turned slowly in the air, limbs flailing pointlessly, too scared to scream. The rushing wind whipped at his eyes, tugged at his clothes, plucked the breath out of his mouth. He saw the big shanker hit the rock face beside him. He saw it break and bounce and flop off, dead for sure. That was a pleasing sight, but Logan's satisfaction was short-lived. The water came up to meet him. It hit him in the side like a charging bull, punched the air out of his lungs, knocked the sense out of his head, sucked him in and down into the cold darkness. So that was the first part. I know this video wasn't very long, but if you enjoyed, then I'll move on to Glocta's part, which I believe is next. But if not, I can do something else. Thank you for listening, and I hope you sleep well. Good night.